Today we're going to talk about dot plots. Dot plots are a way for us to organize our information, our data that we have collected, so that we can better analyze and interpret it. We create a dot plot by creating a number line. Now, we determine which numbers need to be on our number line based on our data here. So we look for the lowest number to start. The lowest number that we have here is 18. So my number line can start at 18. I draw the arrow at the end to show that it is a number line and it can continue on. Now, I must go up incrementally. So I see which is my biggest number, and that's 28. So I put that at the end, but in between, I need to incrementally go up. I could go up by ones, I could go up by twos, I could go up by fives. It sort of depends on what kind of numbers you're working with. Right now, we're going up by ones because our numbers are relatively close together. Now, I don't have in my data table 24, 25, or 26 as a data point. However, I must include them as this is a number line, right? So I do need to continue going up incrementally. So even if that means that there's nothing there, that shows us something, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So we go through the list here. Sometimes it's easiest to just look here and go as we make a dot and then cross it off. I do find it useful to cross it off from our table, although not anything crazy, so you can check your work, maybe just a slight slash, and then put your dot there. When you are making your dots, as you go up, you want to make sure that they're evenly spaced so that you can better see your data. All right, so you go through all your numbers, make all your dots. A way to check your work is to count how many data points you have, and however many data points here should be the same number of data points here. So once we've completed our dot plot, we can start to analyze it. We want to look for three things: clusters, peaks, and gaps. Okay, let's start with a gap. A gap is the space where there is a hole, where there is no data. So this is telling us that no mice had these weights. So that could be a question maybe we want to look into further. Why is there a gap right there? But for now, we just note that there is a gap. We want to look at clusters. Our clusters tell us kind of the most typical weight. If I were to ask what the weight of a mouse is, I probably wouldn't say the ones over here because there are so few. I would say something in this range because that's where most of our data is grouped. So our cluster is a set of data points that are all kind of surrounding those same numbers. And then lastly, we have a peak. Now, you can have more than one peak. You could have two peaks, you could have three peaks. It's the peak is where the highest point is, where we have the most, the data point that we have the most occurrences of. So for 20, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dots, which is the highest of any data point here. Now, sometimes we might not have any peak. Maybe everything's kind of all around the same number of occurrences, so you might not have a peak. You also might not have a cluster, and you can also not have a gap. So in this dot plot, we have all three, but sometimes you might not have one or the other, and that's okay as well. All right, so let's make a dot plot. So down here, we've got a data table that is talking about the ages. So when people retire early, how old are they? And we've got this data. We've already collected it. This is a statistical question because we have a variety of answers. So now I've drawn my number line. I know that 56 is the lowest number in here and 64 is the highest number. And then I go up incrementally between. All right, so let's start. I can start with 60. There's a dot. 61. Now, I have two different options here. I can either go in order like this, or I can start here and say, okay, well, 56. How many 56? Well, 156. So it's kind of your choice how you want to do this. Now, like I said before, you do want to make sure that when you're doing this, your dots are kind of trying to stay in line. If your dots are not in line, you could get messy results. It's not as easy to read. For example, if all of these were mushed together, you might not be able to see that 60 has more results than 59. All right, finishing up here. So whether you chose to go in order here, crossing off, or go in order here, I do recommend you cross off as you go. I can see here that there is 4 by 4, so 16 data points. So I'm going to check my work by making sure that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 data points here. That means I've accounted for all my data. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is notice our peaks, our clusters, and our gaps. So here we have a peak, and that peak would be the tallest, the highest little set of dots. So that right here would be your peak. That may be your typical answer. Okay. From here, we've got a cluster. I would say right here, all of this right here would be your cluster. It's all kind of clustering around that 60, which happens to be the peak as well. That is not always the case, but in this case it is. And then lastly, we've got these gaps. So there's a gap between 56 and 58, and 62 and 64. We've got some gaps. So that may tell us a couple of different things about those data points. Maybe we want to look into them a little bit more. But for now, we just note that there are gaps. So to make a dot plot, we make our number line. We go up incrementally, although those increments might vary between your dot plots. Within one dot plot, you should go up by the same number. Once we've created our dot plot, we go ahead and fill in our data, and then we start to notice things about our data, where the gaps are, where the clusters are, and where the peaks are.